One of the most anticipated, hyped, and loved characters, Zhu Yuan, has finally arrived in Zenless. And being the second limited S-rank agent in the game, I've had many players in my community be concerned if she will bring long-term value to their account, or should they save for future characters, as most players do not want to feel they wasted their polygrams. So today, I'll go over 7 reasons why I believe Zhu Yuan will do your account justice for the foreseeable future. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kata7th, and I'll be your host today. Let's go in order of everything Zhu Yuan can bring to the table, and the first being her element. At the time of recording, there are over 39 different enemy types in Zenless, and 18 of these enemies are weak to Ether. This is massive, as this means almost half of the current enemies within Zenless are automatically a great matchup for Zhu Yuan. And then on top of this, Ether has amazing disorder reactions, especially when paired with Electric, and the pairing of Electric and Ether is arguably the strongest disorder in the game. And Ether also has the ability to completely interrupt ethereal enemies once you have built up their anomaly gauge and procced Corruption. Corruption makes enemies take extra Ether damage up to 20 times based on the unit who procced the Corruption's attack. And when you look at the current in-game content of Shiyu Defense and Withering Gardens, we can see that Ether damage is very prevalent inside of Zenless, and will most likely continue to stay this way for the future of the game too. But the second reason for Zhu Yuan, and I believe this to be one of the biggest, is the huge buff to her core passive. Zhu Yuan's core passive is very key to her kit, and ever since they have buffed it from its original version, needing an Ether unit on her team, to now just needing a support in general. This is a massive buff for Zhu Yuan, as this allows her to now be ran with not just any support in the game, but also any future support that can pair well with her, making her team slots very flexible and can be filled by many. So regardless of if you need ice, fire, physical, or electric for a specific enemy, Zhu Yuan will be able to bring the necessary teammates to help her in these fights. But Zhu Yuan's passive gets further enhanced by the third reason, being her movement. Now Zhu Yuan is slightly behind in LNJO in terms of overall DPS, but when it comes to games like Zenless, DPS isn't everything, as having other qualities and traits can greatly make up for the slight DPS drop-off. And Zhu Yuan truly shines when it comes to her movement, and I don't just mean her running speed, as she actually might be one of the slowest. As it turns out, carrying around the entire baking industry is a heavy task to manage. However, when it comes to her ability in combat to get out of sticky situations and continue doing damage when other DPS would have had a pause is next to none. While pressing Zhu Yuan's basic attack and holding a direction at the same time, Zhu Yuan will attack and dodge in that direction, and if these dodges successfully evade enemy attacks, then they will also be counted as dodge counters, giving Zhu Yuan even more damage opportunity than she already had. But the key to it is not just to spam this movement, but to rather master it, as just randomly moving in the fight can actually hurt you more than it helps, due to potentially positioning yourself wrong or even wasting your DPS. As my friend Roa has shown in his recent video, that dodging during her suppression state is a damage loss, not a damage gain. And to enter the suppression state is performed by holding down the attack button, and Zhu Yuan will continuously release a barrage of attacks in this state, until you let go of the button. If you would like to see more of this explained in detail, I'll leave a link to Roa's video in the description below. But as we can see now, you'll get the most out of Zhu Yuan by mastering her movement, and if you can master this, then her combat will be very future-proof, as you'll now be able to take advantage of situations that once looked grim, because you can now reposition, dodge, and counterattack at a moment's will. So for any dedicated Zhu Yuan mains, I highly urge you practice her movement, as it will take your gameplay to the next level. But speaking of the next level, the fourth reason is her insane burst damage potential. What Zhu Yuan lacks in consistent DPS output, she absolutely makes up for in burst potential, as the 9 shots you can store for Zhu Yuan can decimate almost any dazed enemy in the game, and give them absolute hell while they're immobilized. These 9 shots are extremely threatening, and can also give a very reasonable AoE, especially if you pair her with her best-in-slot support, Nicole, who just so happens to also be on her banner, and a free-to-play unit, who can also group enemies together, shred defense, buff ether damage, and can also give you more crit rate if you manage to get Nicole to M6. Having such a high burst potential on top of being paired with such an amazing support that truly complements Zhu Yuan and allows for her damage to truly shine at any content in the game is massive, and learning how to manage your bullets and take full advantage of enemy stun state will push your Zhu Yuan's burst damage potential to its limits. When it comes to the fifth reason, it's almost a combination of all the first 4, and that's Zhu Yuan's incredible adaptability. What if they continue to release more and more ethereal enemies, as they are the main enemies we have to fight in the story? Well, Zhu Yuan's element is ether, she has it covered. Do they make more enemies that have hard elemental checks, forcing you to bring the correct element to the fight? Zhu Yuan's core passive covers this. Are there new enemies that attack at such a high frequency you aren't able to get many DPS windows because you have to continuously dodge? Well, mastering Zhu Yuan's movement will cover this, as it will allow you to fight back while staying safe. And will they make enemies similar to the dinosaur in Honkai Star Rail, where the damage they take is negligible until you break their shield, but in this case, dazing the enemy, and once dazed they take even more damage than a normal enemy would. allowing for Zhu Yuan's burst damage to be even more prevalent than it already is. When you look at all these together, it makes Zhu Yuan's ability to adapt to any scenario in the game regardless of its content, such as single target, multi-wave, or even a bunch of mobs. Zhu Yuan can adapt and give a great performance every single time. And when it comes to DPS units in gacha games, their downfall to power creep isn't only because they start falling off in damage, but also because they start having bad matchups later on in the game. A great example of this I can give is the indirect nerf to freeze in Genshin Impact. Let's look at Ayaka. Ayaka on release was a very powerful freeze DPS, being able to shred anything that she touched with her burst so long as they stayed frozen. However, Hoyoverse decided to indirectly nerf Ayaka freeze teams by making the Abyss have very few or even no freezable enemies, and if Ayaka can't freeze, she becomes a lot harder to use, as now enemies can potentially escape her burst damage before it has even had the chance to make a dent in their health bars. So when I look at everything Zhu Yuan can bring to the table currently, I just don't see this happening to her, or at least anytime in the future, making her be able to still hold value in later patches of the game. The sixth reason is how incredibly easy she is to build. One of the most frustrating things players face in gacha games is gearing their characters with the right stats, as it is RNG to get the stats you are looking for. So the fact that Zhu Yuan comes with so much built-in crit value in her kit, W engine, drive disc, and even supports with multiple copies. This allows Zhu Yuan to focus more on other stats instead of just trying to max everything at the same time, as when it comes to overall damage for your DPS, a balance of stats will lead to more damage than just saturating one stat and neglecting others, so the ability to focus on the overall balance of her stats and her build is a huge plus and makes the life of any player trying to build her much simpler and easier for the long run. And the better you build your Zhu Yuan, the longer she can last you as a valuable DPS agent on your account. And finally, the seventh and last reason for Zhu Yuan being future-proof, she has an entire faction coming next patch to assist her, with Xingyi having the potential to form one of the best duos in the game alongside Zhu Yuan, and Jane and Seth also being able to shake things up. Zhu Yuan's future is looking very bright in Zenless, and once her team members arrive, we will get to see just how far we can truly take Zhu Yuan, as it would be in Hoyoverse's utmost interest to make factions have great team synergy. And so far we have already seen this, with Ellen and Lycan, Piper and Lucy, and Anton and Grace, just to name a few. Having factions be able to support each other well is what I believe the long-term goal for Zenless is going to be, and the Neps are going to be no different. Zhu Yuan is a fan favorite, and I know many people got her just because they love her character, and that is completely fair. But just know that your Zhu Yuan is going to stick around and be a great pickup for your account, and you'll get a lot of value out of her in the long term within Zenless. But let me remind you all that we have a collaboration coming next week with great content creators, so be sure you stay tuned for that as well, as you won't want to miss it. And I have also started giveaways for my amazing community, and they will be announced on my Discord starting Friday and for the foreseeable future. So be sure to join the server, as we have a very active community with many great members as well. Also be sure to check me out on Twitter at Kete7 and hit the subscribe button for more Zenless content. And as always, my name is Kete7, and with that, I'm signing out.